Welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at FanDuel pricing in the slate breakdown here, and we're doing something new from here on out. We were doing the slate breakdown all in one, but now we're going to split our pricing as far as DK and FD here. So it'll be two shows if you're looking for DK advice. The DK trot there will be up in a little bit. So that's what we'll be moving to from here on out.
It's going to be fun. I think this just makes things easier for everyone, including us, so we don't have to differentiate between prices between the sites, because some of them, there are pretty big differences slate to slate. So, yeah, this will just be better for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking better for everyone, we got a core slate tonight. Obviously, a very giving mood for some runs and two pitchers that really should be hit pretty hard.
Helpful.
Yeah.
How I would describe it.
First game of the night here, Tigers and Nationals. Anibal Sanchez for Steven Strasburg. Strasburg, big size favorite here, minus 176, over under 7.5. I'm not really looking to pick on anyone from this game. I just think, once again, I mean, you saw Bryce Harper get that treatment in the Cubs series, and I think teams have figured out him and Daniel Murphy are the only people that can hit a ball right now, and all you have to do is pitch around them.
Yeah, I mean, it really is that simple for them right now. How many walks? He got walked 5 times in a row, correct?
Yeah, I believe he was up to 6 or 7 in yesterday's game, but that series he had 13 or something like that.
Unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's just going to how they're treating him going forward, and why wouldn't all teams just do that? And then they lose their most potent option. So, yeah, I expect that to continue. And, I mean, I think Strasburg's an intriguing tournament arm. I mean, especially with Coors and people potentially stacking that expensive stack. I think he could be an interesting guy to differentiate yourself in the tournament. But as far as the Tigers, I'm not really touching anyone on that side either.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Everything you said there. I think Strauss is an interesting option. And runs Anibal Sanchez, I mean, an above average arm at times, but overall, just not an appealing options in this game. So, next one here, you got Royals and Yankees. This one should have some runs from both sides. Yankees minus 123 favorites, 8.5 over under there. Chris Young, Ivan Nova. This one, there's a lot of lefties in this game, and this is in a good spot. You look at Nova, 371 low but allowed. Young, 347. Both have given up home runs, especially Young there. Interesting stack options and interesting one-offs. I think this game is a great source for value when working in those core stacks or those high pitching option lineups. I think this game's it's not equal to Coors, but it could be something similar tonight if everything kind of goes as planned.
And I think you instantly go yuck when you look at the Yankees lineup this year. But as you mentioned with Chris Young, 1.57 home runs per 9 to lefties. So this is intriguing for McCann and even a Brett Gardner at super reduced prices.
Yeah, definitely. Those are both the two guys I'm on. And if you even wanted to kind of get a little bit more crazy, to share Beltran, who have obviously struggled this season. But I think against Young, there's plenty to like just because he's a big-time fly ball pitcher. And same with this Royals side. I mean, they are cheap as well. You're looking at Hosmer, Kane, Escobar, those lefties, Alex Gordon, Kendrys Morales. I think certainly in play and certainly cheap guys that you can are in a great spot and can work into those Coors lineups.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, this is a cheap way to get into tournaments with high-priced pitchers. So that's really going to be the debate you have to figure out with yourself if you're going to either pay up for that Coors group or go high at pitchers. So this is definitely an option if you're looking at some of the pitchers.
Yeah. What do you think you're doing tonight?
I'm going pitcher.
Yeah.
I think there's quite a few strong options at the top that I can trust. Obviously, an area yesterday isn't optimal, but I think over the process of a season, things like that average out.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm with you. Paying up at pitching just seems to be a way to go tonight. There's, nearly a full game slate. There's plenty of good spots everywhere else. This next one here, Pirates and Reds, John Neese versus Dan Straley. Over under 9 here in Great American. That's a big one to target. And when you're looking at a Rockies one that's probably going to be in the double digits, nine's pretty close, and that could be a spot to swerve to.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I think I'm looking mainly. Well, I mean, you could argue either way here. You could look at some righties against Nice, Zach Kozart, Brandon Phillips really come to mind. Adam Duvall is a guy who is going to be probably a pretty cheap, popular outfielder tonight, who's hit lefties well and has some pop. What about the Pirates side? Do you like any of these guys here?
Um, it's I'm not really looking at them, but I think there are some intriguing options in terms of McCutcheon and maybe a Starlin Marte. But I don't think I'm really looking at Pirates to build lineups for tonight.
Mm-hmm. I think Polanco is one of the guys who stands out. But I mean, overall, I think McCutcheon and Marte's price right there both sit at 4K. I think it's an interesting stacking swerve for me. I just think in that ballpark against Straley, who, up and down times, but overall since 2014, 362 WOBA allowed, it's definitely something to consider.
Right.
So, next one here, you got Brewers and Marlins. Over under 7.5. Jose Fernandez on the hill. Willie Peralta. Obviously, you jumping all over the Willie Peralta train just because you wrote the Marlins up as a possible stacking option tonight, and you can kind of dive into why they're kind of one of your favorites.
Well, yeah, I just think you look at what Vegas is saying, and then you kind of look at what Willie Peralta's done in his career, and he's really struggled. He's really struggled this year, and I just see a lot of upside with this sort of Marlins stack, especially in the middle. If you start with Prado, he's a nice cheap way to start off a stack there.
And they're not too expensive, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, Yelich and Stanton obviously are a bit pricey, but guys like Bohr, 3K, Real Muto, who's been crushing in the leadoff spot, hitting at 2,800 is not bad. His price is still cheaper than a lot of the other options tonight.
Right.
And on this Brewers side, not really looking at anyone. Their prices are a bit cheaper. But overall, Fernandez, very tough on righties. One guy, you talked about for a GPP option with me earlier was Jonathan Lucroy, hitting very well off right-handed pitching. If you wanted to make a big kind of swerve behind the plate, he's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and while Fernandez is a strong option, he hasn't been untouchable lately. I mean, he has been giving up runs pretty much every start. So I think he's a pretty intriguing option, just in terms of catcher options.
Especially hitting fourth.
Yeah.
So next one here, you got A's and Red Sox. Sonny Gravers, Clay Buchholz, over under of 8.5. Yeah, obviously Gray, things don't jump out at you off of his normal numbers. But overall, this is a guy who can get beat up at times. We've seen it in the last two starts. Vegas, 4.4 runs here for the Sox, 4.1 for Oakland. Both are certainly in play. I know you like the A's as a cheap stack. I do as well, because those price tags are very cheap against Buchholz, who's just flat out struggled. I mean, he pitched decently against the White Sox, but I'm also curious to see him go at home here against an A's team that's just kind of sort of pesky and do have some pop as well.
Yeah, and again, I was sort of thinking in terms of building around that pitcher for FanDuel. I think these are just super cheap options, and they actually have some reasonable upside against what is basically a struggling Buchholz in 2016. So you look at a Reddick, you look at the top of that lineup are switch hitters, so they can go lefty too. I think that's pretty intriguing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Fenway, decent spot to hit. On the Red Sox side, I think Sonny Gray, it's kind of nice because it should keep the Red Sox ownership pretty low, and I think they're actually all great GPP plays 1 through 5 there. Because we have seen Gray kind of pitch very average. Velocity just doesn't look right. He flat out just doesn't look right after the first couple of good starts. So I think Boston, the usual suspects, are in a good spot as well.
Yep. Usual suspects, as you mentioned. I think we're starting to like this Red Sox lineup pretty much every night.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you looked at last night; it was like, four or five homers between the first four guys there. So, Ortiz at 2, Pedroia, Bogarts. So it's like the production's coming from this top half, and you even like some of the back end guys like Bradley Jr., who, yes, he's probably going to lose an at bat at times just because he is hitting ninth, but at those price tags, he, ropes a triple on something, you're good to go.
Definitely.
So, Next one here, you got White Sox and Rangers. Another big over/under of 9.5. Miguel Gonzalez, Colby Lewis, and I keep looking at this game, the game in the Bronx and the game in Cincinnati, and it's like these are three games that you could build a complete team with and completely fade course tonight.
Yeah, and that's sort of the way I'm looking. And I mean, look at this Rangers lineup. It's so cheap on FanDuel, especially the 3-4-5 of that lineup. You look at Beltre, Fielder, and Desmond. I mean, that's costing you basically nothing for the heart of a lineup that's projected to get 5 runs tonight. So, yeah, definitely intriguing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think really, I mean, in this ballpark, warm weather, starting to heat up against two bad pitchers. Yeah, you mentioned those Texas names, and I still think even on the White Sox side, Adam Eaton's still a mid-price guy. I'm definitely looking at tonight. Obviously, Abreu's heated up here. Frazier struggling still, but still worth a GPP look. And I think one guy who kind of catches my eye is Melky Cabrera hitting fifth at 3,200, just at that mid-price range.
Yeah, and he's been in that range for quite a few games now, and he's paid off quite a bit lately. So yeah, definitely intriguing for his price.
Yeah, so definitely do not be afraid to target that game.
Hmm.
Don't be afraid to even pivot to that game just because it's a solid option.
And also there's standalone value with a lot of those plays too. So you don't necessarily need to stack. You could just throw one or two guys in.
Yeah, definitely. Next one here, Padres and Cubs. And you got Vargas and Lester on the hill. Cubs big favorites here. One you can definitely look at the Cubs again here tonight against Vargas, kind of your average righty. Obviously, all those lefties are certainly in play against Vargas there.
Yeah, and I think Lester, in terms of what I'm looking at for pitchers, he's probably my top option on both sides actually, but he's a pretty decent value on FanDuel. So I'm in on that. In terms of the Cubs, I do like it, but I think I like the game we just talked about a little bit more. So I'm not saying I'm fading them, but I feel like I have preference to that Rangers White Sox game.
I mean, I definitely I'm with you. I think the points per dollar thing is a little bit why you're leaning that way, correct?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, you look at these guys: Bryant 4,500, Rizzo 49, Zobrist is now up there. He's not a steal anymore, 4K. So it's not like these guys are cheap. You're still paying premium for a team that's in Wrigley, who's yes, it can be a great hitter's park at times. Obviously, we've seen these Cubs team put up tons of run, but also you're looking at the games in Texas, Cincinnati as being cheaper options now. So.
Yeah, and I mean Jason Hayward's cheap because he's really struggling right now. So it's kind of like that's the value, but is he really a value right now?
Yeah, definitely. Orioles and Twins here. The next one, 8.5 over under in Target Field. Tyler Wilson, Jose Barrios. This one, I think, is something that could go either way here. I know there's an 8.5 over under. Also, two offenses that kind of disappoint at times. More so the Twins, obviously. I think this one could be somewhat boom or bust. I mean, I'm kind of having a tough read because I do like both sides here. I think there are some interesting plays, but it's like I also could see them completely bombing there.
Yeah, and we were kind of going back on Barrios as a guy who maybe you don't necessarily want to target, but this could blow up too. But again, on this slate, I don't think you necessarily need to use this game just because of the previous two games, the Cubs, the White Sox, and the Rangers. I think all three of those are really better options to look at, especially from a value perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And, you look at Barrios' high strikeout rate. This guy can miss, a lot of bats, and some of those guys are pretty strikeout prone. So I think I'm targeting the Orioles in GPP only tonight. Guys like Chris Davis catch my eye. We were talking Manny Machado, or not Manny Machado, Adam Jones' price tag is just way too low for a guy who's going to come around eventually. And I still think a guy hitting fourth there, I don't necessarily mind that one bit. The wind is blowing in there pretty heavily, so that is something to also take into note. So,
right.
Anyone on the Twin side you're taking a look at? Maybe it's just a one-off kind of.
Yeah, I'm okay with Joe Mauer in this matchup against Tyler Wilson. I think that's an intriguing play. Obviously, he's not what he once was, but I think this is a solid matchup for him against Wilson.
Yeah, especially a guy with a great, OBP doesn't strike out.
Hmm.
Kind of Mauer's just that safe option.
Right.
Next one here, you got Indians and Astros over under of 8. Mike Fiers, Corey Kluber in Minute Maid. Um, Kluber's a guy who I think I look at tonight's game and I think, you know what, he's going to go maybe 6, 7 innings, 4 to 5 earned, and like 8, 9 strikeouts, or be completely dominant and shut down. Like it just seems like one or the other for me, which is why he's just a
Right.
GPP guy. But it's like, can you necessarily feel comfortable taking Astros against him to be completely contrarian? I mean, Vegas run
No.
the 4 for each. It's kind of like, well, maybe.
I I can't take the Astros tonight. I do think Kluber is an intriguing tournament option. But yeah, as far as that matchup, that's kind of tough for both sides. So this Astros offense is emerging, but this is a tough matchup for them. So I'm probably avoiding both. But I do like Kluber as like um a tournament play.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Anyone from the Indian side are you looking at?
Um, Michael Brantley is solidly priced. Kipnis is solidly priced. I'm okay with those two.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think Kitnish is kind of by far the guy who stands out for me in the slide, 3,400.
Hmm.
Definitely in play. And I think if you want to get behind the dish, Jan Gomes is another one, 2,500
Mm,
for a cheap guy.
definitely.
But yeah, overall, I'm not really in favor of taking a ton of guys from that game. Next one here, the big one, Coors, Diamondbacks and Rockies. Huge over under there. Archie Bradley versus Tyler Chatwood. Um, I mean, we don't really need to get into who's certainly in play here tonight because it's 1 through 5 with the Rockies with a huge run total. Blackman, Story, Cargo, Arenado, Parr, obviously a top stack option.
Hmm.
We can kind of talk about more of the Arizona side because I think it's a little less known with them tonight.
Yeah. No, I like that. And RIP Archie Bradley. You had a good run in this life, my friend. But yeah, no, I think the top of this Diamondbacks lineup is intriguing just because of their price. It's so reduced compared to the rest of the entire lineup here. So, and I do like Goldschmidt. I think they're an intriguing stacking option. I mean, Rockies are obviously projected for more runs, but it's not like Vegas is thinking Diamondbacks aren't going to get any either. So I think this is an intriguing place to stack the Diamondbacks tonight.
It's definitely a good call. And the more I'm looking at this now, it's like, okay, Segura 3,700 to Story's 45. Lamb's 34 to Arenado's 52, Goldschmidt at 45, and you could even pair him up. He's still cheaper than Arenado.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting. You're saving some cash there, but you're still getting exposure to cores.
Right.
But I definitely think all those names are intriguing. Gene Segura is a guy who I might come down off a Story to get.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And maybe you want to mix and match this game. I mean, we've seen that work out multiple times already this season. So a game stack in general with some of the cheaper options. And I mean, Carlos Gonzalez batting third for the Rockies, only 3,900. So I think I'm intrigued by that quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Next one here, 10-10, Rays and Mariners, Matt Moore versus Felix Hernandez.
Hmm.
Um, Over under 7. I think for me, the only one name that stands out is Nelson Cruz because he's going up against the lefty there. And 3,500 is something that Cruz doesn't usually float down too often. So he is certainly very much in play for me tonight. I know Matt Moore has been decent, but still home run prone at times. I know Safeco's an option, but Cruz at that price against a lefty, very tough to pass up.
Yeah, and I've kind of been playing around with this Mariners lineup lately. They've been kind of intriguing to me, and they haven't really paid off. I mean, obviously, Cano and Seager paid off the other day, but when you look at Aoki and Marte, they've kind of been struggling. So even though they are nicely priced, I'm not necessarily trusting them right now. Um, but yeah, in terms of the rest of the lineup, I do like them, especially Nelson Cruz.
Yeah, definitely. And I think kind of the more we're looking at it here, Felix Hernandez might be a solid tournament option tonight against
Mhm.
his team that strikes out a fair amount. We've seen the Rays not really be that great of an offense most of the season here so far. And um, one, I think Felix will just keep me, you know, completely away from all these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's sort of in that Kluber tier as well. They're priced the same on FanDuel. So I'm looking at them in pretty much the same range of I think this is a pretty solid tournament play, but I still like Leicester a little more for 300 more.
Yeah, no, I definitely with you. Next one here, Mets and Mats for Scott Kazmir. Over
Mm.
under a 7. Once again, I'm not expecting a ton of production here. And it's not necessarily no one really stands out to me that I want to get a piece of.
Yeah, I like Mats in this lineup or against this lineup. I think this is a good matchup. And he's definitely another tournament arm. And I mean, this is a pretty good slate for pitchers. So if you want to shift away from Coors, I think there's quite a few ways to do it. In terms of Kazmir against this Mets team, is there anyone that sticks out to you?
Probably David Wright is probably the
Mm,
only name just because 3,300 at the hot corner. Hitting second. I mean, Kazmir looked better the last start, but overall hasn't been great this 2016. Wright's a guy who's mashed lefties in his career. Probably the only one that really stands out for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that lineup. I can't see anyone else. I want to jump in and throw a line at that. But
yeah.
Wright's certainly an interesting one-off, especially making multiple lineups.
Yeah, as a standalone play, I like that. Tough to trust Granderson or Conforto right now.
Yeah, definitely. Next one here, Blue Jays and Giants, Aaron Sanchez versus Jake Peavy. And
Mm.
we'll
We're,
let you.
we're we're coming for you, Jake. It's all over, pal. Just walk back into the dugout. Um, this is I think this is gonna be a rough game for Jake, and this is one of the main um stacks off of cores that I'm looking at, and they're actually pretty reasonably priced on FanDuel. So 1 through 4, and then Kevin Pillar over Tulowitzki is kind of how I've been going at this Blue Jays lineup of late. So I think that's definitely in play tonight. And I mean, Jake Peavy's just been really below average this year. So I don't think this is turning around. It doesn't appear that it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And since 2014, 328 Woba allowed. Obviously, it's been much worse this year. PV to lefties 331. Obviously, the ballpark's really the only thing that we've seen in his favor, but it was in the favor of the Colorado bats against Matt Cain, and you had your pitchforks out that night for Matt Cain. So
the pitchforks, the fire. There's hay burning in the background for some reason. There's just everything's going on. We're getting the whole town together, going to Jake Peavy's house, and I'm gonna stop this analogy before it gets inappropriate. So yeah, that's what we're doing tonight.
So I mean, necessarily, you look at this J stack. It's not that expensive on FanDuel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're still kind of maybe you have to punt somewhere else to get a guy in, especially if you're
Right.
up on the bump. But it's certainly doable.
Yeah, I mean Sanders 3,100. I think once you start off with that makes things pretty reasonable. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. So that's going to wrap things up here with us. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.